Test 1, 2, 3. Test. Is that better?
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Education meeting. The date is April 27th and it's now 5:15 and I'm calling the meeting to order. And I would love if please Rebecca Starkins could lead us in the flag salute.
Please rise. Place your right hand on your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I have a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. Moved by Mr. Margot and seconded by Mrs. Walker-Schuman. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Dr. Breggy, was there anything to report from the closed session this afternoon?
President Marcus, there was no action in closed session.
Okay, and I'm now going to turn it over to you for our wonderful time to hear about the students or the teachers at the meeting.
Wonderful. I'd like to welcome Hawthorne Elementary, Ms. Kaber, Ms. Holberg, and their students, and I will turn it right over to Principal Kaber.
Good evening, Mrs. Marcus, the entire school board, Dr. Breggy, and cabinet who are there. It is my pleasure to be here tonight. I'm here with Miss Lindsay Holberg. She's been a teacher in Beverly Hills Unified for 7 years. She currently teaches 5th grade at Hawthorne, and over and above her teaching duties, she also is the student council coordinator and the Kind Club coordinator. She's the Kind Club coordinator beginning at El Rodeo School. This is her 4th year doing this position. And originally it started with just 4th graders and it's expanded to include 4th and 5th graders. Just to give you a little bit of background, Kind Club comes from the Kind campaign. It's an internationally recognized nonprofit that brings awareness and healing to all of the negative girl-on-girl bullying that starts right around 4th grade. The goal is for the program and the specific curriculum to help transform that bullying to friendships and a larger community that will help those girls as they enter middle school. Ms. Holberg is incredibly passionate about this program, and it's her goal before anything else that she wants to continue working on next year. In fact, this program is so specific, and this curriculum is specific to just girls, but Ms. Holberg is reaching out to find ways to expand it for a similar club for next year that will include boys. Together with Ms. Holberg this evening, she's brought 3 students, 3 amazing 5th graders that I'm so proud to have with us, Eliana, Livy, and Shayna. And so I want to pass this over to Ms. Holberg, who's going to share a little bit more about what's going on.
Hi, so I am Lindsay Holberg. Thank you, Ms. Kaber, for that introduction. Kind Club, a couple of weeks ago, we had the amazing opportunity to participate in an assembly that was hosted by the founders of Kind Campaign. So we have a few of our members here to tell you about that assembly and to share their experiences with it. So Shayna, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you. So the founder assembly with Lauren and Molly was an assembly that taught us how to be kind. They gave us cards like the Kind Apology card and the Kind card and the Kind Pledge. We got to hear their experiences that they had as kids. I think this assembly made a huge impact on us Kind Club girls. And I think we are now more appreciative and more aware and mostly more kind. I know that we all had a great time and we are happy we got that experience.
In the Kind Club assembly, we met these amazing people, Lauren and Molly. We wrote kind apologies and even kind cards. The kind apologies that we did were really effective. We wrote down an apology to someone we felt needed them. They were such a great way to apologize to someone and show them how you really feel. After that, we did kind cards. The kind cards were meant for complimenting someone that you might not be very close with. It is a great way to be kind. It was so fun to share what we wrote for the kind cards. The people we wrote to were so happy to hear what we wrote about them. It was also really nice to hear what the other girls wrote about others, or even wrote about you. It was such a great experience.
At the assembly with Lauren and Molly, we did something called a kind pledge. A kind pledge is a pledge that you make on a card and pledge to do something kind. Ms. Holberg made us a kind wall, which we used to stick our pledges on. After that, whoever wanted to was asked to go up in the front of the class and share what they wrote. This may just be a card, but it made a huge impact on me and everyone else. These cards meant a lot and were a great experience to everybody.
The Kind Club Assembly with the founders of the Kind campaign, Molly and Lauren, was special to me because it opened up how cruel girls can be to each other and the deep negative effect they can have on one another. It was also special to me because when I received a few kind cards, they made me happy because every once in a while you need a confidence booster. Kind Club is a safe space where girls can express themselves, have support from other girls. Another thing I love about Kind Club is it's a place I can talk about anything, and I will receive all the support I need to feel confident and at ease again.
Amazing. Can we also screen share? I'm going to screen share and share a little bit about what the assembly looked like for everyone. This was the Instagram, is that right, Ms. Holberg? This was the Instagram post afterward with the founders who sort of spotlighted our students. And here's an example of the kind wall that they put together. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you, ladies, for being here. We so appreciate you having us and letting us share this amazing program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments? Anybody want to make a comment? Yes, Amanda, Dr. Stern.
Well, I think that this is wonderful. Certainly there is no shortage in our society these days of some unkind acts, and we're all aware of that. And as a district, it's wonderful, and I really applaud efforts for civility, kindness, generosity, and all the things that you young ladies and Ms. Kaber and Ms. Holberg were able to demonstrate, and I'm very happy to see that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item on.
I just wanted to say how wonderful this program is and applaud you and our students for being such great ambassadors for the Kind Club. Really wonderful job, and I really hope that you carry that forward with you. Like Amanda said, we can't have enough kindness in our world right now, and I love that you learned such an awareness, and you'll be great ambassadors. So thanks.
Thank you so much.
Bravo to our young people. I love to hear everyone speak so confidently. I think that's a silver lining of COVID that we didn't really see before. And thank you, Ms. Kaber and Ms. Holberg, for sponsoring the program, for putting it together and bringing these kids together. It's a wonderful, wonderful environment and great skill to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening. Very interesting. Loved hearing about the program. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for making this possible, even in this crazy environment. So thank you so much. Have a good night.
Okay, next, Surplus Property Advisory Committee report. Dr. Berge.
We're very thankful that we have our 7-Eleven committee with us this evening, and we'll let Mr. Roach take over and do some introductions and tell us a little bit about where we are with the 7-Eleven committee and the report.
Thank you, Dr. Berge. I just want to say this has been an amazing committee. We've been working since the end of last summer. We've had 11 or 12 meetings during the COVID pandemic. We've kept on schedule, done a lot of great work. Tonight we have our chair, Peter, our co-chair, Jonathan, some committee members, Colleen, Richard, I think Ronita's here. Matt may be here, I'm not sure. We had a great committee, a lot of work. I'm gonna turn it over to Peter. I know he's on a schedule, and maybe Peter and Jonathan can take it from here. Peter?
Thank you very much, and it's great to be with you. I am going to have to leave pretty soon, but Jonathan and others can pick it up where I leave off. And really, what my purpose is to really answer your questions. We submitted a report to you some weeks ago, and then we have prepared a final report relating to the district offices site, which I believe you've had for several days. And essentially what that does is that it focuses on the idea that we will try to repurpose the district offices site by finding a developer to in effect partner with us to develop housing there, with the goal of generating sufficient revenues from that to create functional district offices, and also hopefully some revenue for the district. And hopefully this would all be at no cost to the district. That's our objective. And that we would ideally, and we certainly can't promise this, but it's going to be what we're striving for, is to create some housing that, at least in part, can be used for district employees and be at some discounted rate off of market. And in order to pursue this, and essentially the first major step would be to identify a developer who would work with us, presumably through a ground lease of the site. And in order to do that, we must seek a waiver from the state requirements that we simply offer whatever opportunity we have to the highest bidder, which we don't think would work in this, is not, not the ideal way to do it in this situation. So the action item for you is to, that we're proposing, is that you authorize the district's lawyers to seek a waiver from the state requirements. And that, we understand, will take some number of weeks, if not months. And then during that period, we would refine the proposal so that we can pursue it once the waiver occurs. And essentially what that would be to put together a request for proposal that would hopefully generate or let us identify the best developer to work with us. So that's one action item that we're requesting from you. In addition to that, we have started to develop at a very, very preliminary level potential uses for the Hawthorne campus in the event that you decide to repurpose that. And the thoughts that we have include taking over from the city the preschool operations that the city runs, and have those moved to and consolidated at the Hawthorne campus. Also, we're thinking about Hawthorne as being a temporary or permanent location for the district offices, as well as likely a temporary place for the maintenance and operations work of the district. But in order, the key piece of that would be the preschool, and in order to kind of see if we can move that along, what we are suggesting is that you designate an appropriate representatives of the district to just enter into some very preliminary talks with representatives of the city to see if there are things that we could do together that would use the Hawthorne campus in an optimal way. So that's the second of two action items that we are proposing for your consideration tonight. And I just to be complete, we are also in a preliminary stage of working to identify uses for the parking lot that is now used for the Beverly Vista faculty, we understand. That's the one on, I think, Elm and Gregory. And what we're pursuing is an idea that we would find a developer who would build probably housing there, but also create sufficient parking space to accommodate all of the needs of Beverly Vista, and then hopefully also generate income for the district. That's very preliminary, and I'm just mentioning that by way of information. That's not something that we have before you tonight. So that's it in a summary nutshell. But I think we would be pleased to answer any questions that you have about it.
Okay, so I think, thank you very, very much, and thank you to the committee. You've done a great job. We've got some great ideas, and thank you for all the time and effort that you put in. I know you've had many meetings, you've spent many hours, and you've really done a thorough job of trying to imagine what we can do to meet the excess of what we perceive as maybe excess property and what we can do with it. So I'm going to start it around the horn, and I guess I'll start with you, Dr. Stern. It's your turn this week, and you're on.
Thank you so much for the recommendations and the guidance. I have a question about the Lasky building. Is it in fact zoned so that we could easily entertain the idea of a ground lease, or would that be an involved process to get that approved? I was wondering about that.
The short answer is that we will have to get it approved, to get the zone change approved, but I don't anticipate that would be problematic.
Thank you.
Mr. Margot.
Thank you, committee members. This has been a long time coming, so I really appreciate all the work that you've done, especially during the pandemic. So my concern, probably, as you pointed out, is the Beverly Vista parking lot. And in regards to supporting the resolution tonight without that particular issue being fleshed out more. So I wanted to put it out there that I don't have an issue with the rest of the report. I support the findings. I support the conversation starters that the report brings up. But I think because you guys, and I will quote it so people understand. It just says under the parking lot space at Gregory and Elm, there's a possibility that the board will decide to repurpose this site. We have been asked to consider alternative uses. We are in the process of considering alternative uses. So since the report is still in process, I wonder, does it make the report more of a preliminary or a draft that there'll be some sort of follow-up? Do we have to approve a second resolution? Can we table it until the findings are entered into the report? Those are questions that I'm going to ask not only of the committee but of my colleagues as we move forward tonight. But you bring up an interesting point about repurposing it to a developer with the idea of, obviously the area is chock full of residential, and if that's the idea, with the amount of parking required to accommodate the staff at that school, and Dr. Breggy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're about 100 spaces or something we would need.
Well, it's about 100 spaces I believe that there are about 100 spaces in the Elm parking lot.
Right.
And then we're short about 25
Okay.
total.
So it's 125 spaces, and my basic understanding of developers, there's not a lot of money in return for a developer to put in a parking space. There's, living quarters is where they make their money back. So I'm just concerned that with that many spaces needed, will we actually get a bite on this? But I'm going to hear the rest of my colleagues out, and we'll see as we move on to the resolution how to resolve it.
Do you mind if I respond briefly?
Not at all, Peter. Go ahead.
First of all, you raised perfectly valid questions. The current report is a quote unquote final report relating to the district offices. We could have waited until every little jot and tittle was in place for not only the district offices, but also Hawthorne is something where we really need two to tango. So there's not much more we could do about that, but we could also have done a much more complete presentation. I assume once we really focus on it, which we haven't done yet regarding the parking lot. But I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good here. And I'd like to proceed with the district offices, bearing in mind that we will also be presenting to you a final report relating to the parking lot, but we're just not there yet. And that may take us a little while. And we've been working on all of this for 7 or 8 months. And I think that we're getting to the point where you're really going to want to be doing, if you repurpose Hawthorne, that will be something you could do as soon as about 18 to 24 months from now. And all of this stuff takes a long time. So that's why I personally, and I believe the committee, advocate that we move forward with the district offices, bearing in mind our commitment to you that we will be bringing we hope to bring to you a comparable recommendation relating to the parking lot, but they are independent, and those particular pieces of the puzzle really are separate. So I would advocate and urge that you move ahead with the district offices, bearing in mind our commitment to bring you something relating to the parking lot as soon as we possibly can.
I appreciate that, Peter. And just to even further clarify, there's nothing to prevent the board from moving forward with either the SB waiver or partnering with the city on future projects, whether the report has been finalized through the resolution or not. So the recommendations in the report are now public, and the board has the ability to act on those at any particular time. They're independent of basically the report are recommendations. It's not permission. So if we wanted to move forward with your solid recommendations, we can do so. So thank you very much for that.
Mrs. Wells.
Well, I'd like to thank you for your work. I think it's really wonderful work, and I love the creative thinking and problem solving to think out of the box and look for solutions that don't cost the district money and the need to raise funds with another bond. So I really love that you're thinking that way, and I think the district office sounds really wonderful, and I hope that we can approve going forward with the waiver. I think a question has come up about what that cost and what the timing is for the waiver. So I think for both ideas for the parking lot and for the district office, those would be something to think about. And I would love to see the idea for the parking lot to get further developed to see if that's a feasible idea. And with regards to Hawthorne, I also really like the idea about the preschool and and talking to the city about what ideas, what could be feasible there in terms of talking about possibilities. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Well. Mrs. Tristan Schumann Walker.
Thank you guys so much. We in the district, not always we, because it was boards far before I was here, tried to do a 7-Eleven committee to address these issues for many, many years. And this is the first time it was successfully done in I think, about a decade. So I thank you for your participation and your contributions and your recommendations. I'm going to try to address some of the comments that my colleagues have made just so that we can figure out where we have consensus. I do agree that the resolution should include all of the properties. As Noah said, there's nothing preventing us from moving forward. So that said, I agree with the recommendation that we should seek a waiver for the district office and for the Lasky parking lot. That doesn't mean we have to do something with it, but I do think that we ought to look at what that process is, what the time is, and what the cost is involved, and I think we ought to pursue that. There were plans from 2011 for that, for the parking lot at Beverly Vista. And on the plans for 2 levels of parking plus some on the surface was only 103 stalls. So I think if we're talking about having enough for staff and enough to actually generate revenue, it would require another level of parking or parking to be above ground in addition. And I am concerned that in that residential neighborhood, we may have a difficult time building residences that are higher than 3 or 4 stories. But that said, I think that it's definitely worth pursuing and exploring anything that we can do to creatively repurpose our property, especially when it has the potential to generate revenue, is really important and should be explored. I completely support the idea of putting the preschool at Hawthorne. That actually, it seems like Governor Newsom has indicated that that's part of his plan also, not too distant future. So I think for us to plan for that would be very wise. And I'll look forward to more final recommendations from you, from the committee for the Beverly Vista parking lot. But I really can't tell you, I can't express how much I appreciate your contributions and effort. This is great work.
Do you mind if I butt in for a second and respond to something that you just said? A lot has changed since 2011 because of the perceived housing shortage in Southern California. And just to be very brief, there are a lot of incentives for the creation of housing that bottom line could allow for more intense development than the law would have permitted in 2011. So, and we will be focused on those changes, those kinds of incentives for both the district offices site as well as the parking lot site.
Yeah, noted. I think I'm in agreement with you, and I know that there are several buildings that go above the 3 or 4 stories, so I'm hopeful that that's something that we could potentially take advantage of, and I look forward to hearing your additional recommendations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I agree with my colleagues on many of the issues that have been brought up, Peter. I have some questions about the waiver and getting the waiver, and these are questions that need to be answered in order for me to know the length of time it will, if you get a waiver, how long it's good for, how much it will cost, and so on and so forth, if we were to move ahead with it right now. I think that a lot of what we're looking at, and I'm very much in favor of eventually looking into the situation at the offices, but it's all tied in with the construction that's going to be finishing up at El Rodeo. I think there's a lot of pieces there that allow for us to think ahead and to make some plans based on when Hawthorne would become available to repurpose it. And I definitely agree with my colleagues about the preschool and the office, district offices moving there, the administration offices moving there. But there are so many parts that have to be fit together that I would like to, I have no problem going forward and I appreciate all the work, but I would like to see how it's all going to come together to make it work as a unit. And that's something that is in the back of my mind. I hadn't given much thought to the parking lot yet. I had not thought that that was going to be something that was under consideration, so I'm just going to hold off until I see what some of the possibilities are on that. But as to the other two pieces, I definitely think we have to move ahead at some point, but I'm curious to know how we can move forward with the construction and so on.
I apologize, but I'm going to have to run to the Citizens Police Academy meeting, or they will send a warrant out for my arrest. But I think that Wade, Jonathan, and others could answer other questions. And I also would note that Stephen, our counsel, is here, and he can, I think, give you much more detail about the waiver process. But I'm going to have to sign off. I just want to express my appreciation for the great privilege of being allowed to help. And that's really what we want to do, is help you.
Thank you so much for everything, Peter. Really, thank you. Okay, let's, anybody else want to go about, make any other comments? No? Any other further comments? Any questions from any other members? Okay.
So, Stephen, can you let us know what the timing and approximate cost would be to apply for a waiver for the two properties mentioned?
Yes, I can. So the waiver process would require, it's generally two steps. So the first step would be the board would have to announce that it's intending to seek a waiver, hold a public hearing so the public can comment on that application. Once the board decides to go forward with the waiver, we have to jump through some hoops and submit an application to the State Board of Education. The application goes to the state board, it goes up the food chain, so to speak, and then the state board has to consider it at one of its meetings. So their meetings are held once every 2 months. The next one is May 12th, which I highly doubt we would make that one. The next meeting is July 14th. It depends, the timeline just frankly depends on the timeline of the State Board of Education. We can submit the application right away, but it just depends on how busy their staff is and how filled their applications and their agenda gets. I can tell you that we've submitted applications and waivers for schools throughout California, and we've never had any rejected, but sometimes we've had to wait a good amount of time just because, again, it has to go up the food chain, so to speak. So I could tell you that we could try our darndest to make that July deadline, that July date for the waiver to be considered by the state board. There's no guarantees. And again, a lot of it just depends on how busy the board is. Now, in terms of costs, there's an application and we have to jump through those hoops, fill out the application, ask certain questions of the district, but in terms of just the actual cost of submitting, there's none. So beyond attorney time and staff time, there is no cost. And to a point that somebody made that I think is valid, just because the district seeks and receives a waiver does not mean it needs to act on it. So you can have a waiver and you don't need to take any action. The waiver application asks us how long we want the waiver to be valid. Typically, we ask for a year. So whenever it's granted, we ask that it be valid for a year. We could ask for more time, but usually the state suggests that a year is a good time. So once we have the waiver, it'll be valid for whatever time the state board grants, and that's usually a year. So again, we can get the waiver and the district can wait. They don't have to react right away. They can just sit on it until they want to move. But we can move forward with the waiver process. But again, that would require the board to adopt another resolution just indicating that that's what they want to do. Seek a waiver. We hold a public hearing where everyone's invited. It's an open session. And then if the board decides to proceed, then we move the ball forward, take that information and submit the waiver application to the state.
I just want to follow up, Stephen, is there one property per waiver, or can we list multiple properties?
So you can seek a waiver for multiple properties. So technically it would be separate applications, but you can submit them at the same time, if that makes any sense. So the state can grant one waiver for one property and not grant it for the other one, but you can submit them at the same time.
Yoni, how about, I didn't give you a chance. Would you have any comment that you'd like to make about all of this? I'm sure you might have something that you'd like to say.
I think it's interesting turning the
parking lot into an apartment. I think that's pretty
cool if it works out. Other than that, no comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to make a comment? Tristan Walker-Schuman?
I know this is the question that lawyers always get asked and can never really answer exactly, but do you have any ballpark figure and how much attorney time and fees we would be looking at to actually process through and make the waiver? Like, is it 1,000 hours or like 10 hours?
Again, I'm going to give you the standard legal answer, at least a little bit. It does depend, because sometimes we get a lot of questions from the state board, and frankly, it depends on who's processing the application. But usually it really only takes a couple hours for us to tee everything up. We work with staff because we have to get certain input from the bargaining units. Basically, we have to send them an email saying that we're going to submit a waiver, and if they have any questions, please let us know. And that's basically it. So the application itself takes, I'd say, probably less than an hour. The issues come up is sometimes we get somebody at the state board who asks a lot of questions, follow-ups, just because, and we have to address those. But the costs typically are minimal. And I can tell you, I've never seen a waiver application in terms of attorney time take more than 5 hours. So that's not a guarantee, but I can represent you with almost complete confidence that it's not going to take more than 5 hours to prepare. Now, again, the timeline, most of it's just waiting for them to process it. So that's a separate issue. But in terms of costs, it's typically 5 hours or less.
Thank you.
Anything else? No. Anybody, any other? So we would probably need a motion for the approval of the resolution and accepting the advisory. Anybody want to make a motion?
I actually am going to make a motion to table this so that we can actually vote on it when it's complete, because it doesn't prevent us from moving forward and actually applying for the waiver now. So instead of doing double duty, I would rather give the committee a little bit more time to make their complete recommendation, including the parking lot, and then have it come back to us as a resolution that we can adopt just once, if there's no objection.
I'll second the tabling.
Okay, so we have a motion to second the approval of the resolution number.
Sorry.
Can I make a comment? Sorry. Just from a legal perspective, so in order to seek the waiver, we have to show a resolution demonstrating that a report from the committee was adopted. So if you table, we can't seek a waiver until a report is adopted.
Okay.
So if you adopt this report and give instruction, you can adopt this report, give instructions to the committee to come back with another report fleshing out the other properties. And seek a waiver, but unless the report is accepted, the district cannot seek a waiver.
But we still need the resolution for the waiver as well, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But that means also, if we seek a resolution for the waiver, right now we can only request it for the property that's in the recommendation, or
No, I think all the properties are in the report. So even though the committee has not finished their full recommendations, we can apply for the waiver for the parking lot at Elm and Gregory, but I don't think it hurts us, and they can still opine on.
Is that right, Stephen? We can apply for the waiver without having the result?
Once the report is accepted, the board can request a waiver for any properties. I will note that the report does include a recommendation for the waiver for the district office. So, and it doesn't for any other properties. So it's possible that the state board will review the report and ask why the committee or why the board is seeking a waiver that wasn't recommended by the committee. And that might cause issues. It might not.
Yeah, but Stephen, if the committee comes back to us before the report is submitted to the state board, before the waiver application is submitted to the state board, then we can submit that supplemental report, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I,
Can I
that was
just
my
mention one
hesitation
thing?
in
No,
accepting
we're
this
talking
then.
about the fact that we couldn't possibly be ready for any kind of thing before July anyway, so we have some time to work on it if we, and give the committee a chance to.
Right.
So I'm saying.
Right, I'm just saying if the committee knows that their charge now is to complete that section of the report, whether they make the recommendation or not, prior to our application getting up to the SBE,
Right,
then we'll be covered. If not, what Stephen is saying, we risk.
Well, we weren't planning on doing a waiver, right now anyway, so in other words, we couldn't make the next meeting of the State Board of Education for this anyway. So we have time, if we plan to do it in July, to get the complete list of
Yes.
property.
Yeah.
So I guess my question for the committee would be, do you feel you have enough time really in the next month? Because we still have to have a public hearing before we make the application for
Right.
that meeting in July. Do you feel you have enough time to firm up your recommendations and come back to us on that parking lot if we adopt the resolution tonight?
Yes, I think we do. I think we can make that timeline.
Okay, so then I am going to amend my motion to.
Just withdraw your motion, then we can go back to the resolution on the table.
Okay, so I'll withdraw my motion and I will move approval of
Wait,
this.
let's, before you withdraw, we need Mr. Margot, will you?
I accept your withdrawal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move approval of resolution number 2020-2021-033 and accepting advisory committee report and recommendations regarding real district properties.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Who said that?
Mandy.
Dr. Stern, okay. So we have a motion from Mrs. Walker-Schuman and a second from Dr. Stern to approve resolution. Any further discussion on the motion? Mrs. Wells?
And so then it's implied, or we're clear that then you'll be coming back with the follow-up for the other property?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thanks. I just wanted to clarify that.
So the only thing that we are actually approving is the waiver for the offices right now, correct?
Well, we're approving the report. We have to give direction to do the resolution for the waiver.
Okay, all right.
So I think we need to take a vote.
Okay, I think, are we ready to take a vote? Okay, Dr. Stern,
Yes.
Mr. Margot,
Yes.
Mrs. Wells,
Yes.
Mrs. Walker-Schuman,
Yes.
Mrs. Marcus is a yes. The vote is 5-0, and that ends that discussion. Thank you so much, all of you. It's been wonderful. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to a little
you.
bit more work on the committee. Thank you. Any comment
President
from
Marcus,
anybody?
yeah, I just want to make sure the board has consensus to give direction to Dr. Breggy to, one, make sure that the 7-Eleven committee finishes that report on the parking lot, and also bring back the resolution for the waiver application, because so we can get that all started.
Okay.
And see if
Okay.
we are all in agreement on that direction. If anybody is not in agreement, now's the time, because we're giving direction.
Okay.
Are we all in agreement?
Good, okay?
Yeah, great.
Okay.
All right. Any other? Okay, this is the time for the public comment. I believe that we have three people that would like to make a comment. Start with Mr. Shinbrad. Are you there, Mr. Shinbrad?
Yes, I am. Hi, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to preface my comments by saying that I know it might seem a bit early to be asking this, but after I read my question, you'll understand why I'm bringing it up in the end of April. A question that really speaks more to where we're going to be in August. And I know I'm asking for some prognostication, but here goes. So last December, we pulled our honor student from BVMS and put her in ILC because we were told by district staff that virtual learning, live at BHUSD, would not be available once LA County is out of the red tier. That now turns out not to be the case, as virtual learning, as we all know, is being offered while the schools have reopened. So can the board today, and I know it's a bit of a big ask, but can you today tell families such as ours what options will be available to us in the fall? If our child is vaccinated before school starts, we'd like to put her back in BVMS and have her return to classroom learning. If, however, she is not vaccinated by the first day of school, will we be able to re-enroll her in BVMS and have her attend virtually as students are now able to do? ILC has been fine, but we would have much preferred to have kept her in honors classes at BVMS and attend virtually, at least until she's fully vaccinated. So, you know, in a nutshell, will we have the option in the fall that parents now have today? Or will we be faced with a choice that if you want your child to attend virtually, you have to pull her out and put her in ILC?
Hello, Mr. Shinbrat. It's Michael Breggy. Nice to see you. I really wish that we had some final answers to what we're going to be able to offer for next fall. I mean, we are working very closely with the county on what the expectations are for the fall. I want you to also keep in mind that through our Student Services Department, we always have a process for accommodations for students. And so at this point, it's a little bit premature to say what our classroom instruction will look like. If I had to make a conjecture right now, that would be, according to the direction of Governor Newsom, is that we are going back to a situation where we will not have the ILC, that it will be classroom instruction only, with, again, options in place for accommodations for students that would be what we've always had in place in the past. So at this time, I couldn't say that there would be the combination available for a live at BHUSD and also the in-person learning.
And I understand we're asking you to kind of predict the future, but you also have to understand that that's what we heard in December, and now we look and, of course, are thinking to ourselves, gosh, if we'd known this, we wouldn't have put her in ILC.
So
it's kind of where we're coming from.
No, I understand. So if I could just make one comment towards that, because I think it's important that something that we had a conversation about in December is that having live at BHUSD is there's no way to completely replicate what's happening even at live at BHUSD, that same experience that's happening in the classroom. And that is a lot that we continue to ask for our teachers to be able to provide the in front of the computer and laptop, as far as, and then also the students that are in front of them in the classroom.
But they're doing it now. That's my point. They're doing it now somehow.
Okay. Mary, Nathan? Mary, Nathan? Okay, Josh Reitzenstein? Hello, Josh.
Hello, everyone. Distinguished board members, administration, fellow teachers, parents, and students. It's Joshua Reitzenstein here. It's been another great day in the counseling enriched classroom, and please forgive me. I feel called to speak to you today from the trenches, also known as recess, of this very pivotal reopening. I want to honor and commend everyone who has borne the stress of this last year and acknowledge that we are all doing our very best, down to the smallest student. But the stress on our school system is immense, and it's doubled, if not tripled, under this global pandemic. While we juggle changing health codes, teaching hybrid, standardized testing, another new schedule, how to wear a mask and adhere to social distance on the playground, or contact tracing a positive test at our school site, the moment really requires us to stop and reflect, to take a breath. We've been through a pandemic. In the rush to reopen, we've heard a lot that kids need to be in school, and it's very true. But that statement is really just the beginning of a conversation. So I think we should ask the community. Kids need to be in school in order to, and you can fill in the blank. It can be a hashtag. Because the answer to this question really gets at the heart of education. And I think the conversation would be crucial, especially if we include student teacher, and community voices, informed by the lessons of the pandemic, to better understand what we as a school district can truly do to meet this moment. In my opinion, it's the ultimate opportunity for social and emotional learning. I mean, I've never been forced to utilize my coping strategies more, right? And if I, an adult with tools, am struggling, imagine what our students are going through. And we're in the midst of a once in a generation educational opportunity to re-socialize students to going to school again. And as I said in August, it requires a trauma-informed response. It's been great to see kids back. I just want to say that it's amazing. And while much has been made about the now seamless integration of technology in our classrooms, I hope our schools can center around something more human. I urge the board to revisit the recommendations issued forth by the social emotional wellness team during August's think tank. There were calls for a committee, a community-wide survey, and board members vowed that in many ways, this was an opportunity to recognize what is at the center of our educational system. This student-centered social emotional wellness perspective is an essential element in helping us feel safe as we come back to school. And I believe it's a great direction for us to strive towards if we're truly going to have education reimagined. I really look forward to picking up this conversation. Please feel free to reach out. There are lots of great ways that we can be thinking about this and keeping our kids safe, both physically and from a social and emotional perspective. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Pam, this is a request. There was a letter that was sent out that was, the lady hasn't shown up. Did she ask you to read the message? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
You're muted.
Pam, you're mute.
Sorry, I was on video, not talk.
That's
This
okay.
lady did not reach out to us. I sent her the Zoom link and we've not heard anything. So last time that lady had to leave because it was so late. I've not heard from this person. So we can read it, we can enter it into the record, or we can not. It's up to you.
So, Ms. Kraus, does it say on the form whether the community member wanted it to be read or that they were going to read it?
They were going to read it and they were sent the Zoom link for the meeting.
It doesn't say on the comment that they want to have it read.
No, it says on the option.
Well,
I think they have to come in.
It says, I wish to read the following comment. They're not here to read it.
Because they say they don't want to read it, so let's just get included into the minutes.
This should be attached to the minutes.
Attached to the minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, moving on.
Want them in the minutes or not in the minutes at all?
No, put it in the minutes. Attach it to the minutes.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
All right. Approval of the consent calendar. Is there anybody who wants to take anything out of the consent calendar, please?
No, but I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, second.
I'll second.
Thank you. I have a motion from Mr. Margot and second from Mrs. Walker Schuman to approve the consent calendar, so we will move on.
We need to take a vote.
We are up to reports.
We need to take a vote.
Oh, Adam, yeah, vote for it, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Superintendent's report. Dr. Briggy.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcus. We'd just like to start off with our report today to give you a little bit of a history of where our adjusted case rate has fallen since the surge at our highest January 19th when we were at 75.3. Today we were reassessed as we are every week, and we are at 1.9. So we are now in the yellow tier, which is a huge movement towards the improvement in our community. So wanted to share that really good information with you. Along with that information, just our reopening. And we are just so excited and thrilled to be able to reopen physically our in-person instruction 5 days a week for our students. Last week on Wednesday is when we had our TK through 5 students come back for our full-time daily instruction. And then yesterday was our first day for middle school and high school 5-day instruction. And I just want to thank our school board and also our community and our staff for moving us right along. This is exactly the way that LA County wanted us to begin to phase in-person learning, and we have followed all of those recommendations very successfully, which is why we are at the place that we are today, where we could offer full day, everyday instruction. So I realize that there is still a lot of anxiety with the improvement that I just shared with you. Going to 1.9 for the adjusted case rate is something that we could never have seen even just 5, 6, 8 weeks ago. And I do understand that anxiety, even though there is improvement, the improvement also brings on some challenges and anxieties in where we are and that mindset that we have for the safety of ourselves and our students and our staff. Just wanted to share some numbers with you. I think it's really important to know that we have 30 days of school left. And that anxiety kind of ebbs and flows. Today, for sure, with the announcement from the CDC about looking at the restrictions for mask wearing and removing that mask for certain situations for vaccinated people, and depends, of course, the space that you're in, where you're at. And I know that that raises a lot of anxiety as far as what we are going to do in LA County. We do know that as of late this afternoon that LA County is going to align their practices with the CDC, but we do not have the exact language yet. But they've given us indication today that there will be some alignment. So again, I know that there's some anxiety with that, but in our schools and in our classrooms, we have 30 days left to remain safe. It's very, very important that we remain very safe with our practices so that we can follow through with what we have instructed our students, some of the graduations and activities and promotions that are just around the corner for all of us. So I wanted to prepare just some numbers for you to look at. This is a question I get all the time as far as the number of students that have returned to in-person learning, the number of students that are in hybrid learning, which is our live at BHUSD, the virtual learning only, which is our ILC. And so this gives you a little breakdown at each of our schools about who's in person, and it does vary by day. We do know that we expect the attendance to go up each day in our schools. And again, the success that we've seen over the last month or so has been because of this phased in approach. So it's working very well. It was a little surprising, some of the data, but I think it's worked in our favor as far as being able to demonstrate how that we can manage successfully larger groups of students coming back into our schools. So I just want to give another thank you to our families and our staff and our students for getting to where we are today. The finish line is right around the corner, and with our due diligence, we're going to get there, and we will get there successfully. Another thank you for our Student Bill of Rights. Just as a follow-up for our board after the successful passage of our Student Bill of Rights. Special thank you to Agi Banataba, who was instrumental in this Bill of Rights and the work that she did with our elementary schools and our middle schools. And so we have, as you can see, we have framed this Bill of Rights. And it has a really unique presentation to it, and it's hanging in all of our schools because we're going to live up to our end of our support to the Student Bill of Rights. And there was no better way to do that than to kind of memorialize this in a fashion where we would be proud to hang this so that people could see it and so that we can live by it. We are getting ready to do our final virtual celebration. We are looking at a combination of celebrations. Teacher Appreciation Week and our Classified Appreciation Week is coming up. We're going to tie in our retirement celebration as well as our Apple Award winners. So there is a link here, an address for you if you would like to register. This is the first time that we are doing a combination ceremony, which really puts the highlight of just appreciation for our staff. And so we're very excited about that. So we do welcome and we do invite all of you to join us. There'll be several surprises along the way in our ceremony, and this will be a way to finalize our recognition for staff this school year. Any questions?
Let's start with Dr. Yoni, do you have any questions? Okay, Dr. Stern.
Thank you, Dr. Breggy. My question for you, I was looking at the interesting numbers of some of the high school students, and it appears that the vast majority have chosen the hybrid option, so virtual and also live in person. Do you see that there's been a trend whereby more kids are trending towards coming in person as the days progress, feeling a little more comfortable with that? Or are you seeing the reverse? More kids are reverting back to virtual?
Well, at the elementary level that just started, that's been consistent. That we were already 5 days a week. We extended the instructional time for our elementary TK through 5. And so we've just now started our secondary with our second day of our 5 days a week instruction. So it'll be interesting. I'll bring those numbers back to you as the remaining weeks are coming up. So it's hard to say right now. But it is really nice, and I just want to thank our middle school and high school staff because we're really, it's so nice to see that we're working with students, some students that prefer to be at home and be, they're learning through live at BHUSD, but also then attend an event after school. And it's really nice to be able to see that flexibility so we're not boxing people into one choice or another. And I believe that we're going to see that open up over time as students are back and feel comfortable.
Mr. Margot, any comments? None? Mrs. Wells?
I'd just like to say thank you to the staff and the teachers for making this happen. I'm really excited for the students to be back at school and for iterating the program this year so many times over. It's just really, I recognize it's a lot of work and it's not been planned work. It's been, according to the county and what we have to respond to and so quickly. So I really appreciate that. And I think it's such a great next step for us. And it will allow people a chance to get used to this before we move into the fall, which is wonderful. So thank you.
I don't have any questions. I do have a comment, though. It's a precautionary warning, and I was really dismayed to receive videos of middle school parties that were happening on the weekends outside of school. And I know that's not our jurisdiction, but I would just like to remind everyone that if we have 3 cases that are tied at Beverly Vista, that will shut down the whole district. One school shuts down the entire district, and it would be an absolute shame, having gotten this far, to have to shut the district down in the last couple weeks of school or before finals or just before graduation. So please, I know that everyone's returning to normal and it feels like a whole new world. I totally get it. The kids are too young to be vaccinated. They are still vectors for infection. Please, if you're going to get together with people, keep masks on. Please be conscientious, because this will impact the entire community if even only the middle school has these circumstances happening. So my appeal is just to be, please, very considerate, because we're all still in this together and we're in the final shoot. I really don't want to see this get sidelined because everyone's so excited to have normal life back. That's all I have.
I would like to iterate that also in terms of some of the activities that are coming up and how they could be here severely impacted should the students not continue to take the proper precautions. And I think that's something that they should be thinking about, because those promotions, those graduations are coming up, and I would hate like heck to see anything interfere with those. And that's probably one of the highlights that these kids are going to have this year. And again, I'm thrilled with the 1.9, but it isn't zero. And you know, there's still room to keep our guard up, and we should be doing that, as Mrs. Schumann said.
And Mrs. Marcus, if I could say just one point too, there's a lot of information that is still coming from the state, and so I really want people to take a step back and be reflective of how we've gotten to where we are now, and to keep in mind that there are health orders that are created just for live events, and they're very restrictive. So when I say that there's anxiety, when you are starting to hear, and this will be the news story tonight and tomorrow, that CDC is allowing masks to be out, and I just want everyone to be really careful, because these health orders for live events are very restrictive. But we've done a really good job as a school district to have those mitigation strategies in place, like our testing. And so there is a considerable amount of work every single time there's a live event. It's not just a capacity issue. There are a lot of screening and testing and a lot of plans that need to be submitted for approval. And so I just want people to know that there's great things happening, and that there's this green light that's out there that we're going to be able to return to activities. But large group outside activities still have a lot of restrictions to them, and we have a responsibility in LA County to still make sure that we follow them. So I know people are getting really excited, and like you said, people are throwing parties, and be really careful, because as a school district, we are not able to just throw events and just have people show up. We have to be really methodical. It's got to be really thoughtful, purposeful, and plans have to be filled out, submitted, and approved by LA County.
Thank you, Dr. Berge. Mr. Kashanian.
Is this my board report or comments?
Student board report.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I think it's a big accomplishment that we're finally back full time. Students are happy, teachers are happy, attendance has been going up, and it's just great. Many seniors have been wondering how many people they get to invite to graduation. That's a question that I've been hearing a lot. For the current schedule, I've heard many complaints from some athletes that they miss a lot of their third period, which is usually a core academic class, and this is sort of concerning. They were told just to join from Zoom, from the bus, which doesn't really make much sense. In addition, sophomores are wondering if they will have a PSAT day, and if we're going to have a career day this year. Next, everyone is really anxious about the next year's schedule. Some of the questions I've heard go as follows. Is lunch going to be after fifth period or before? Is zero period going to be a thing anymore? Can seniors or anyone leave school before lunch? Is ASB and KBEV going to remain a fifth period class, or are they changing this? Will it be a block schedule or a normal 1 through 6? Will sports turn to an after school thing, or will it remain a class period? That's kind of the types of questions that I'm getting. Next, ASB has been taking advantage of this new schedule, by holding our first recess day today, where students can safely have fun and socialize. We plan on holding these as much as we can now that we're finally back fully. Other than this, everything is going great. Thank you.
Wow, lots of questions.
Yeah.
I wish I had an answer. I don't. Okay, we're now going on to 12A. Do I get a motion for 12A, please?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the ratified tentative agreement on 4/22/2021 by the BHEA IA unit.
I'll second.
Was that you, Mrs. Schumann?
I second.
Okay, motion moved by Mr. Margot, seconded by Mrs. Walker-Schumann. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will call for a roll call of the vote. Dr. Stern?
Yes.
Mr. Margot?
Yes.
Mrs. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker-Schumann?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. Okay, we're going to go now to, I guess it's Mr. Wade and a COVID funding and enrollment update presentation. Is that next?
That is correct, President Marcus. Let me.
Hello there.
Uh,
Good. Ready. Did I scare you?
You okay there, Mr. Roach?
Mr. Roach? Is he frozen? Huh? Do I want to what?
Join his presentation so you can see it on here. Just while he's pulling it up.
While he's pulling, go to the next piece of business?
No, I was wondering if you wanted to join the Zoom for his presentation.
Yeah, I want to join the Zoom, but I couldn't get back to it.
So if we go here.
Oh, that one, yeah.
President Marcus, board, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Thank you. I have a very short presentation tonight focused on COVID funding. I apologize, there's lots of words in this presentation. I'll try to make it as concise as possible.
I can handle it. I was educated here.
So in a nutshell, we're going to receive 10 separate one-time funding streams related to the COVID pandemic. Half of them will be state funding and half of them will be federal funding. The federal funding will amount to about $7.8 million. The state funding about $3.8 million. So about $11.5 million in total. One-time revenue streams. We'll account for them much like we account for categorical programs. They all have separate rules and regulations. And some of them go through the 2024 school year. In short, when you look at these 10 separate programs, the federal programs are much broader. They can be used for many more different things in general than the state programs. This chart just shows you the federal programs, which total about $7.8 million. When you look at various reports that my office may send you, you'll see something called a resource code. So you'll see here like learning loss mitigation is coded 3220. So when you see a report that says it has a resource code that starts with 3, that's a federal funding resource. So this is just a chart of the federal dollars that are coming in. You can see that the learning loss mitigation resource 3220, which had to be expended by the end of May, is pretty much totally expended at this point. We use those funds, those federal funds, for our Independent Learning Center, for our staffing for that program. On the other end of that chart, you see gear funding of about $223,000. We used a lot of those funds for our expanded food service program and for PP&E. I'll just keep on going here. The next several slides are just bullets of what we can use the funds for. As I said earlier, the ESSER funds, which are federal funds, are very broad. You can use them for any purpose that you could use Title I funds for, or Perkins or McKinney-Vento homeless funds. You can use it, if you look at bullet 3, providing principals and leaders with the resources necessary to address the needs of their individual schools. So the language is very, very broad with these federal programs. I'm not going to read through all of this. You can use it for PP&E. You can use it for educational technology, for meals, for any educational services, for mental health services. I know that has come up many times. And then bullet number 12, any other activities that are necessary to maintain the operation and continuity of services. So these federal funds are very broad in their use. And it is the largest pot of money that we're going to receive, one-time funds. So I'm not going to go through all of these. You can read these on your own. The other 5 programs are our state funding. The state funding in general, especially the state funding that has just come in, is a little bit more restrictive. You can see here, our state fundings all have resources that start with a 7. So 7388 or 7420, those are our GEAR, our learning loss mitigation funds. Those 2 first pots of state funding that we received have pretty much all been expended. The last set of funding that we received from the state is also called AB 86. Those funds are being used for various purposes. IPI means in-person instruction. So those are very targeted for those kinds of programs. ELO is an acronym for learning loss, extended learning opportunities. So we are working with staff, our instructional leaders, our student services leaders on developing a budget that we'll present to the board in the next month or so on how to use all of these funds that remain, both federal and state, going into next year, and then actually the 2 out years. I'm not going to go through all of this other than to mention that here's the in-person instruction grant, which is really focused on getting people back into the classroom, both teachers and students. And then the expanded learning opportunity grant. Through these funds, just as a side note, the board recently rescinded some layoff notices for our elementary school teachers, some of elementary school teachers. We've used these dollars to bring those teachers back to address learning gaps, to close learning gaps. So we were fortunate to have those funds in order to be able to rescind those elementary layoffs. In addition, we also have a paraprofessional set-aside grant of a little over $200,000 that are focused solely on our instructional aides in the classroom. So we're working with our principals and our instructional leaders on how we're going to be able to use those funds. So in a nutshell, once again, COVID funding, about $11.5 million we have received or will receive. Expended, encumbered, or assigned through March 31st, about $4.2 million, about 36% of our anticipated funding. What we have actually expended through March 31st, of course, the largest chunk is our independent learning center staffing. And you can see here the other expenditures, the second biggest expenditures, of course, is for PP&E, and then for technology when we were in distance learning, instructional materials, then thermal cameras, plexiglass, and things like that. So we've actually expended about $2.5 million through the end of March, but we've encumbered or assigned other dollars as we move forward. Very quickly, enrollment. I was pleased. I did not know Dr. Breggy was going to have an enrollment slide, so I did a real fast calculation, and we're only off by 1 student. Thank you, Dr. Breggy. So
well, we all make mistakes, Mr. Roach. So it's okay. You're off by 1.
So here on this slide, what you have is you have the 1920 enrollment there, which was 3540. Then you have our 2021 CBEDs, our CalPads. That was taken back in October, which was 3315. And then April, we were at 3281 students. So the next column, you have grade to grade cohort change. And I think these numbers are actually maybe more important than the total enrollment, because what you see there is how many of our, say, our first graders that we had last year became our second graders this year. How many did we retain? So if you look at 1920 enrollment, let's just start with first grade, was 159 students. So in second grade this year, as of April, we had 152 students. So we had a 7-student decline. That's kind of how you read this cohort change. And I think it's really important to see that because when you lose a big senior class, or in the case of this year, we had a lot of TKs and kinders that didn't show up, I think really because of the pandemic, the numbers are kind of skewed. So it's much better to look at the cohort change to see how those numbers fall out. So that's good information for the board to have. And then the final column is just the total enrollment compared to a prior year. But notice that even though we lost 259 students, 78 of those were because of permits. We had a reduced number of permits. So from 200, we had 234 permit students last year, and this year we only have 156. So that's something to note as we look at our overall enrollment. We actually believe, and we're getting more information every day. When I talk to student services, we're having students re-enroll that had disenrolled from the district. So I think we're getting new students every day. So our resident population actually may be fairly stable, but we may continue to lose students because of our permit losses as students go other places. So that's all the information I have for the board tonight, but I'd love to answer any questions you may have.
Dr. Stern?
Thank you so much. Wade. So again, these COVID dollars or the money for the pandemic, if it's not used by a certain time, refresh my memory, what happens to those funds?
Yeah, so let's take a look at the chart real fast. So here are the federal dollars, and you can see the expend by date.
Oh.
We will expend all of those dollars in 3220 by the end of May. You can see that the ESSER 1 and the GEAR $1 don't need to be expended until the end of September of 22. The ESSER 2 is the end of September 23, and the ESSER 3 is 24. So we should have no problem expending these dollars through that period of time. We were concerned in the beginning about the 3220, the learning loss mitigation, but we were able to expend those dollars through Independent Learning Center, and the GEAR dollars, of course, through PP&E and some food service programs. So going down to the state dollars, the only one that had an upcoming deadline was the learning loss mitigation GEAR dollars, and we only have $500 left as of the end of March. So we're not too worried about that. The other ones we have through the end of August of 22 for the in-person learning and expanded learning opportunities and the paraprofessionals. So we're working on a plan right now with our instructional leaders to enhance our instructional programs throughout next year. And we fully expect to expend all those dollars. In a nutshell, we don't plan to leave any of these dollars on the table because the state will come in and sweep those dollars back if we don't expend them.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Margot?
Thank you, Mr. Roach. So the big one is the ESSER 3 fund. And I don't think we'll have a problem with the state allocations, but are we going to be able to allocate the ESSER 3 funds? Do we have plans for those dollars, tentative plans, so on and so forth?
Yeah, so in speaking with instructional services and student services, a lot of the intervention programs that they're developing, we intend to carry into 22-23 and 23-24. So we're going to be able to use these federal dollars since they do have very broad definitions on use to continue that intervention once those learning gaps have been identified. So I have full faith in Mr. Seaman and Ms. Chisholm to develop some great programs to utilize these dollars.
I appreciate that. Are we utilizing these dollars this summer, Mr. Seeley, for some of that mitigation? Yes. The answer is yes to that. Thank you. I noticed, we went over through the consent calendar, but there was an item for replacing air handlers at the high school, I believe was on there. And I noticed that the funding source were the COVID dollars because of indoor air quality. So I was going to ask that question, then I doubled back quickly to see where the funding source, double check the funding source. So I do appreciate that we are using those dollars wisely to benefit all sorts of our districts. So thank you.
Mrs. Wells?
Well, I'd like to say thank you, Mr. Roach, for the presentation. There's one thing that I would request, and just in terms of looking at where we have the dollars spent so far and how you're planning to put together a plan going forward, that we also make a priority the social emotional aspect and to look at programs for enhancing those programs, because I hear in so many different fields everybody is talking about the impact of the social emotional, and I feel like we should have a plan in place to address that and to see what we're looking at as we come back to school, because I think it's affecting everyone, the teachers, parents, families, and the students, and it's worthwhile to look into and to make a plan for. So I'd ask you to look at that.
Mrs. Walker-Schuman?
I completely concur with Mrs. Wells. I think the social emotional part, not just for students, but also whatever outreach we can do more of for families and for teachers in particular. I think we definitely need to spend some effort and time there. This is a great report. It's nice to know that we have the resources to address some of the things that this pandemic has kind of left in our lap. I wonder if it wouldn't be wise to have a conversation about potentially including mandatory COVID testing for the students. For elementary school, I think, not so much for the high school, because there's not that many that have come back yet. And the high school students are eligible, many of them, for vaccine. But I'm concerned that the middle school is vulnerable. And I know LAUSD has mandatory testing requirements once a week, that students are not allowed to come back to campus if they don't have a negative test. So I'd be interested in knowing if that's something that we could execute in the short period of time between now and the end of the year to try and really protect ourselves and make sure that we don't end up vulnerable to losing our graduation ceremonies, celebrations, and all of those types of things. I think we can take a little bit of precautionary effort now to make sure that those are secured for all of the students in the 5th grade, 8th grade, and seniors.
So one thing I'll look into is, our general counsel has advised us and other school districts that they represent that is not required and mandated for students to return. So I don't know what the fine print of that looks like for LAUSD, but I will certainly look into that. And then depending on what type of test it is, that's an extremely expensive thing to do. So, but we could certainly look into it. But our council has repeatedly advised us that they could not require that in order to come back to public education.
Yeah, I do recall that, because I remember we've asked this question before, but I know that LAUSD is doing it. I've actually, several parents have sent to me the actual requirement and the language and everything else. So I would be interested in knowing how LAUSD can do it, but no other public school district can do it.
Yeah, I'd be happy to look into that.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to thank you again, Wade, for a very comprehensive report on the money, and it's very understandable and easy to follow. As usual, your reports are always that way. I would like to just remember that I'm very interested in the gaps of the education, and I'm looking at all the money that we will be spending to pick up the gaps where the kids have had their education interrupted or where it's not been what it should be. And also, I agree with the social and emotional money that has to be spent to bring these kids back so that school becomes exciting and that they're thrilled to be there. And last but not least, that we will be totally on top of not leaving any money on the table, that it will all be spent, and that the balance in the budget will be 0-0 with the money that we get from the Corona-19 funds, whether from the state or from the federal, that we do spend them, and we're going to spend them wisely for our children, and that's the most important part of our education. And Dr. Brady, you wanted to say something. And again, thank you again for that report, Mr. Roach. Dr.
So
Brady.
I often wish that the board and others could kind of see the day-to-day of what happens in our cabinet team. And this is a very unique opportunity to share with you how some of our day-to-day business is done, because business services often is an area in public education that is kind of off to the side, working in isolation. And so there's a huge responsibility that comes with this amount of money. It's a great problem to have, but there is an incredible amount of responsibility that goes along with having this money, with the expectations, the accountability, how it's used has been mentioned tonight. And I just wanted to also just extend my thanks to Mr. Roach for his approach, because as these funds were becoming available, we met and he said, you know what, I really need to have some time with the whole cabinet. This is not an isolated event. And so we as a cabinet have met. I think we met for 4 or 5 hours. And so we were all held accountable for going through this dollar by dollar, program by program, and how we're going to be accountable and how this is going to be actually documented. And I've never seen that approach coming from business services in my entire career. And although nobody wanted to spend 4 or 5 hours with Mr. Roach, we did.
Why not? Mr.
Horvath brought lunch, and it was just a really good working opportunity, because oftentimes, as cabinet members, we don't see the financial impact, and we don't get to see what we do in each other's jobs. And so it was a really good opportunity for us to see where the money's coming from and how it's going to be used, and the accountability and just the processing. And it was just a really good moment for our team to be able to share that experience, but also be able to be really well versed in how the money is being used. So I just want to thank Mr. Roach very much for that approach. It was a really good fit for us as we move into the future. So thank you.
Okay. Moving right along, I think we're at item 14A. I need a motion, please.
I'll move approval of amendment number 6 to the agreement with Environmental Audit, Inc. for asbestos and lead abatement monitoring services for Beverly Hills High School Administration Bridge.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion for this agreement by Mrs. Walker-Schuman and seconded by Mr. Margot. Any discussion on this item? Yes, Mr. Margot.
Dr. Stern, did you have any questions before? Thank you. I see Mr. Blake is with us. So my question would be, since this is the third bridge at the high school that we're going to be taking down, what is to say that it doesn't contain the exact same hazards or non-hazards that the first 2 bridges built at the same time contain? And shouldn't we operate as though it does, or do we have to have this report done anyway?
Yes, we're assuming that at the time it was built, materials, etc. is very similar, but we are under regulatory obligation, because we have knowledge, to do the survey and do the reports through the air quality.
Okay, so when we do start the process of dismantling it, and I'm not sure, Mr. Blake, if you know the timing on that, is that when we're looking at doing that project?
We are wanting to plan this summer, but it depends upon what we call a mega trench that will go up about half of the space of Heath. That is the future underground utilities to service the south portion of the campus. And depending on the approval process and the design process, we'll coordinate in between. I want to make sure I was clear in my answer. AQMD does require, Mr. Margot, that we do the survey and we do the report.
Okay, will we also be held to the same requirements during the demolition of it, or do we just operate based on the initial information and what we did with the other 2 bridges?
Yes, the survey is what produces, it's the chicken and the egg. The survey produces for us the scope of work. as with pretty much every part of what we do at the high school campus, the demolition and the testing and the survey gives us direction for not only lead abatement, but asbestos abatement and all hazardous materials. That tells us what to mitigate. And as we go through the process, we also monitor the activity and test the activity that we're in compliance with AQMD regulations.
Do you have any reason to think that you'll find something different or encounter something different than the first two bridges?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Blake.
Anybody else? I have a question. Mary? Yeah, okay. This has also part of the total plan, part of the whole budget that going forward, right? This abatement and lead.
Yes, Mrs. Marcus, this is part of what we call the abatement program that began about 2015. And as we go forward, it's a continuing part of the process as we go through the buildings. Much of B1, B2 was mitigated in terms of hazardous materials and demolition, but prior to 2016, that work was stopped. And the work that was planned for B3, B4 was also stopped. And so as we began to do the demolition and begin the construction in B3, B4, then those efforts began again. So it is part of virtually everything we touch for demolition of the buildings, as well as the buildings inside, as well as the case in point, which is the bridge here.
Did it cause much change in the budget plan for the bridge and for the other buildings? Was there a change in the?
We have budgets and contingencies for this is what we call unknowns, and until we uncover or do the survey, we calculate them with a budget and a contingency, and we're within that contingency budget.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Okay, call for the question to Dr. Stern.
Yes.
Mr. Margot?
Yes.
Mrs. Wells?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker-Schuman?
Yes.
And Mrs. Marcus is a yes. Okay, we're on to communications from board members, and I'm going to call on Dr. Stern first this time.
It was a very positive meeting tonight. I very much enjoyed being part of our governance this evening. I want to thank everyone for the reports, as well as the school with the Kind Club from Hawthorne. Yes, Horseman. Sorry, it was wonderful. Thank you.
Hawthorne. Okay, Mr. Margot.
Thank you. I did want to mention that I don't even know if I can even do this or not, but Sierra Michelson, who has been part of our construction team for a couple of years, 2-3 years now, who has just been a stellar member of not just Dawn's team, but our whole community as she's interacted with everybody, is moving on to different pastures. I don't want to say better because I don't want her to think she's making the right decision, but different. And I just wanted to. She has been incredible in all of my years around here and watching different people work with the bond program. She has been absolutely incredible, an amazing personality to deal with, always positive. Sierra Michelson. And we're going to miss her, and we really thank her I'll speak on behalf of the board and everybody that for the work that she's done in leaving her part in our district as she moves on. But a lot of the buildings and things you see will have her stamp behind it in many ways. So thank you to Sierra and for Dawn for having her as part of our program for these years. And I also, I'm supposed to say that on May 5th, because I don't think we meet till the 11th, May 5th is National Bike to School Day. So, I'm an advocate of biking. In fact, unfortunately, I had to drive here tonight because my bike was in the shop. But I'm a huge advocate, and hopefully I'm always in contact with our city officials about how to make this a more bike-friendly community, especially for our students that conversation happens all the time. And as we shift to things like no single-use plastic, we should also be thinking about getting more people on bicycles and making sure they feel safe in our city doing so. So thank you very much.
Mrs. Wells?
Thank you very much. I would also like to wish Sierra good luck and to farewell. I can attest that all of my interactions with Sierra have always been really wonderful, and I will miss her too. So I'm sad to hear that news this evening. And that's really it. Thank you. And I think also May 5th is the Apple Awards, no? So you can bike to your Zoom. Thank you.
Mrs. Walker-Schuman.
So I want to add on a little bit to what Mr. Margot said. Yes, Sierra is phenomenal. We will miss her incredibly. She was a wonderful member of the team. I have no doubt that that she will be missed, but we'll have a very competent team addition to TCDS in short order. I wanted to just bring some district awareness for our parent population to the Complete Streets Plan, which was approved by City Council last week, I think it was, which is not, it doesn't actually execute any changes yet, but it really begins the conversation and the commitment of creating a more bike and pedestrian friendly city. And one of the parts that for me was very appealing was a bike lane that in concept would go from the high school all the way down to Horace Mann. I think that would be incredible, a protected bike lane to cover all of those neighborhoods and help encourage our neighborhood schools to really have our students and families walk or bike to school. And so I'm not gonna mention again the National Bike to School Day. That was already mentioned. I will, however, highlight the spring middle school dance show, which was phenomenal, and also a shout out to Marnie Persand. We had our 8th graders and some staff do the Don't Stop Believin' promo for Rock of Ages, which was just beautiful. It was wonderful. It was so nice to see all these happy singing faces. So that's all I got. Thanks, everyone.
Before I go on, Yoni, would you like to say something? And then I'll...
Sure. Let's turn that off. The next recess day for the high school is this Thursday. This Friday there will be a pep rally during school at lunch. Also this Friday we have a Brighten Our Lives trivia game. And on the note of biking to school, I really encourage it.
I actually biked to school like all my freshman year and part of my sophomore year. And it was great experience, and I encourage anyone to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoni. Just a few points that I would like to make. First of all, in the last few weeks, every Monday morning, I've been watching the KBEV Weekly and the students who do that. And I need to tell you, I'm amazed at their poise and their presentations, and I really enjoy it. And I get to learn a lot about what's going to happen in the week ahead at the high school. So I would like to shout out to the KBEV and the ASB for their presentations on Monday mornings. I also want to congratulate Mr. Lisko on that wonderful art show. I never saw so many different pieces of media, and I think that it was incredible, and I'm hoping that next year that it can be done in the City Hall, Municipal Hall, like it's supposed to be. But the amount of work that those kids put on, it was really sensational. I really enjoyed it. Again, the dance show the pandemic didn't stop them. They did a fantastic job and displaying their talents, and it was great to see. And that was already mentioned. And then another thing I watched this week, which I thought was quite entertaining, was the dog cast for the ASB at Beverly Vista Middle School. And that was quite enjoyable. I enjoyed that. And I think that the entertainment and the education and the formation of the formative information on it was wonderful. So I'm really today giving a shout out to all the kids that performed during the week, and how wonderful it is to see them not letting get what happened in the past year get them down. They moved on, and I would like to thank you. Anything else from you, Dr. Breggy?
No, thank you.
And so our next meeting will be on May 11th at 5 o'clock. We will be in person, but the meeting will be by teleconferencing for the non-essential visitors. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 6:58 p.m.